an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 4, Episode 9. I Need Some Balance. In this episode, Rebecca just wants to get laid so bad, and she just keeps on having problems. And it's one of those things, man, that it really does feel like people talk about how easy it is for women, but when we try and actually put that to the test, not really. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Tegan for commissioning this episode. This episode was a lot of fun. I really, really liked this one. So the whole thing, what I meant in the intro about people saying it's easier for women is this, long-held idea that women can always get laid. It's just that we often have too high a standard. So it's the kind of, there's this idea that we hold the sex and men are always trying to get at the sex and we keep them away, but we could open the door and let them in at any time and also get the sex. And so it's just one of those weird stereotypes that makes it sort of seem like sex is something that women are stingy with or something. It's a weird idea. And I have talked to so many women who have just wanted to get laid, and they have run into the kinds of issues that Rebecca has in this episode. Now, I personally, my issue really, and this is something that I'm certain won't actually be dealt with in the show in any great capacity, but what a lot of people forget regarding, well, women can get sex at any time. Let's say that's true. Let's just pretend that all women have a bevy of men on this, on wait, in this line that they could call up at any time from their little black book. Let's pretend that's true. How many of those men are worth a damn in bed? That's the real question. Because men come a lot more easily than women do. Just a fact. And so, sure, a woman may have a whole list of guys who would be willing to sleep with her. But out of that group of men, how many of them actually know how to fuck her properly? That's really the issue that we don't address in our culture. And I heard a guy once say, bad sex is like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. And I'm just like, oh my God, only a dude would ever say that. Women know how bad sex can be. And it's just awful when it's really bad. It's not just unsatisfying. It can be actively painful. It's just... So, as I said, I know that won't be something that, comes up here, because she definitely talks about, in the context of the show, it'll come up, how difficult it is to make women come. I mean, obviously we have the whole, subplot with the, buzzing from the bathroom, and there's an acknowledgement in the, what was it? We banged you here, we banged you there. What is the name of that song? Tap That Ass. And, eventually it's just no, I'll just do it. Is one of the actual lyrics. But yeah, that's always something that I feel like gets really left in the shuffle, is whether we can find a person to stick their extremities into our orifices isn't actually the part that's difficult. Okay, so let's start the actual episode here. I love the whole thing with Rebecca watching porn being a recurring thing. Again, with the stereotype that women don't watch porn, and it's a thing that it's like, well, a lot of women have difficulty finding porn they like because it's always been assumed women don't watch it, so it's been made for the male gaze. That's not necessarily the same thing. I am a porn watcher, I will admit, and it can be really difficult. And this whole opening is like in a courtroom, and it's these three guys that this like hot judge is going to be getting banged by at the same time. And when we see these guys from the side, it's a black man, a man with a beard, and like a clean shaven, very sort of jacked dude. But then when the camera turns again, it's Josh and Greg and Nathaniel. And Anna says, most porn is tearfully boring. Honestly, that is true. The thing that I find the most difficult, just, I am much more of, I get turned on by implication rather than like super explicit imagery. And so a lot of porn, it's just the camera's too up and everything. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm not really interested in that. But, that's like kind of the point in a lot of cases. So it's hard to find subtler, slightly more artistic types of porn. And oftentimes, understandably, it's the kind you have to pay for. Because, they are actually doing something. And that can be tough too. I'm a stinger. I need to probably get over that in a lot of ways. She's going to get it from three men at the same time, as is her right, says Rebecca. I love her expression when these guys when these guys pop up and they deliver their lines, review my penal code. Motion to proceed with my motion. Oh, God, why is there dialogue in porn? It's such a waste. And she winds up getting too many pop-ups, I think, is what winds up happening. Well, first they all turn to her and tell her explicitly why they would not have sex with her again or reconnect with her again. We have Nathaniel, who's just like, you've rejected me too many times. Josh is like, well, you straight up stalked me. Greg, you fucked my dad. There's no coming back from that. And she realizes that her fantasy just couldn't actually work. Oh man, guys, I wish so much that I could turn that sort of thing off, because that's a real thing. Like, if you fantasize and you are able to get past the absolute, impossibility of some of the things you're fantasizing about, I have so much jealousy toward you. Because, if I would like to fantasize about Jason Momoa, I cannot sustain my suspension of disbelief that Jason Momoa would ever fuck me. I can't do it. I want to. I want to believe it. I want to just let myself have a good time. Nope. My brain's just like, girl. Oh, maybe you could do Jason Momoa's stunt double. Maybe you could do that. I'm not even 100% confident. And it ruins everything. So yeah, then she gets a bunch of pop-ups and she slams her computer shut and just goes to bed. There's a little info thing about the cats that are invading San Gabriel Valley, and there's all these feral cats in and out of dumpsters and whatnot. And this leads to the weird, convoluted theme of the rest of the episode, which is cats. And I just really, there's no way to not talk about it, right? The Cats film. A show of hands. How many people have watched the Cats film? There is a video that I took of myself when I went to see it. I made Owen go. It was I think the last movie that we saw in theaters before the pandemic, and we just, not a great way to end things there. And I I swear to God, you guys, I took this video of myself because as I was walking out of the theater, I was laughing so hard that one of the guys who worked there, who was waiting to go inside and clean the theater, asked me if I was okay, because there were tears pouring down my face and there was like an edge of hysteria to my laughter that felt like maybe this isn't funny. That kind of laugh. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? And I feel like it was I don't know if this has ever happened to any of you, but I have had situations where I'm laughing so hard that it crosses over and I start crying. And that's just partially due to the fact that I repress my emotions in order to feel in control. And then the laughter will kind of like sneak up on me because it feels like a safe thing. And that's how my crying will like manage to finally force its way in. It found an opening that the laughter had like pushed open the door, and then the crying wedges its foot into the door and won't let it close again. And it manages to. So I can understand why that guy was concerned. I could have easily crossed over into crying time, but I didn't. And I took the video of myself laughing and trying to explain. I had also taken some CBD before we went to see it, which certainly didn't help. And you guys, that movie is inexplicable. I truly can't believe how insane it was. It's just the kind of thing that like, it's not even good bad in the way that like good bad can be fun to watch because it's too long and too excruciating. I feel like if it were a half hour shorter, it would fall into the good bad category. But earlier, there's a flashback, or the previously on, and Cats is mentioned a few times, and there was a joke that Paula made about Rebecca putting on Cats in prison. And, as somebody who's actually in musical theater, in my history, I have that. I know how sort of reviled that was by so many people. Really, Cats wasn't considered a musical by a lot of people that I was like friends with. It was considered like kind of a trashy ballet, was like oftentimes the way it was treated. But anyway, the recurring Cats in this, after having seen Cats, it really worked super well for me. I really enjoyed it. I found it really funny every time, even though it wasn't that clever. It was just, I wasn't ready for it. Every time that it happened, I was like, all right, well, that's the last one. Even though I knew that was unlikely, I couldn't really think how she would do another thing with it. And it's also a really great way to deal with everything that's going on with her vagina and feel like you don't have to, she's getting graphic without getting graphic, which is really tough. I just thought it was well done. Let's see. Megan says, this did come out before the movie. I have not seen it though. I think you shared it again on the anniversary and I was so excited for this episode to come up. Yeah, I have the video on my Facebook and then I shared it. I wish that it's on my phone probably. But oh my God, it was what I've heard since then is that the actual play, which I haven't seen, full disclosure, I only saw the movie. I've heard that the play doesn't have that sort of main character cat that's in the movie, and therefore the play works much better because for some reason, the writers for the movie thought that there needed to be a sort of audience insert character who was just learning about the Jellicle cats, and therefore we could like be in her perspective. And once I realized that's like something they created for the movie, it all fell together why the movie didn't work. Because yeah, she sucks. She's a nothing character. It's a lot of like, there's a lot of weird attention paid to her that doesn't feel like it makes sense. And if it had just been a bunch of cats talking about themselves, instead of this one cat that's like weirdly interfering with everybody, I feel like it would have just worked better because it's more of a series of vignettes instead of attempting to be a story, which it isn't, and just to stop trying to make that happen. Rowan says, I grew up reading the Elliot Cat poems that the musical is based on. One of the first pieces of fan art I ever did was Jellicle Cats, but mine were ice skating instead of dancing. I love it. This would actually work really well as a, like, you know, a skate sort of extravaganza. Erica says, I don't know why, but my 5th grade teacher was really into the Cats musical and made us learn all the songs. Yeah, when I was in Connecticut in grade school or maybe middle school, the Cats was playing at the Schubert Theater at the time, and it was a big deal, and the commercials were on TV all the time. But even as a kid, I really wasn't interested. Even from the like commercials, the songs were too synthesizer-y for me, and it just didn't appeal. And I stand by that. Anyway, all right. So the first cat dream that she has is the hungry cat. And this is obvious. I was surprised it wasn't the thirsty cat, because that, you know, is such a thing now. But basically the whole thing is that she's super horny. And I love Rebecca waking up and being like, what does that mean? And she's like, I think you know. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but does anybody else find it incredibly off-putting that Rebecca's like bedroom opens right onto the patio area? I don't think I knew that this is how her room was set up. And maybe it hasn't been in the past and they just did it for the effect of this episode, because this thing with the cat coming in, and we have the thing later where she can see Nathaniel and Greg out on the patio, that wouldn't really work without the doors opening. I mean, it could, but you know, it's sort of a nice shortcut. But just practically speaking, that was sort of on my mind. Owen and I have finally agreed that we're going to move away from Texas after our wedding. And so we've been like very casually looking at houses in various areas of the country because we're trying to find some place that's affordable that would also allow, you know, good job opportunities for him. And if I found a place where like the bedroom like opens right onto a patio, I think I would find that really off-putting, and I wouldn't want that. It's I just, especially when it's like ground level, you know, if you had a patio that like is on the second floor or a balcony that overlooks like the backyard or something, that's a whole different thing. But this would just feel really dangerous to me. But it's also tough to know exactly how private this whole area is because it's an apartment, right? And so I'm assuming that there's other apartment entrances along these walls, but I might just not know where she lives super well. Anyway, so yeah, this cat does this whole sexy, hungry cat dance. I haven't eaten in months. I'm roaming through the streets looking for something to munch, and it's a lot of pelvic thrusts. It is amazing, honestly. I love it. It's super awkward. So then we cut from her dreaming this and then finally waking up to Greg talking to Josh and White Josh, BT dubs. And it's very clear that Greg is struggling with being mad at Rebecca. He wants to forgive her, even though it just feels like an unforgivable thing. And White Josh is obviously not understanding that. Like, Greg doesn't correct him, but White Josh says something about like, well, thank God it's not something that you need to try and get over, is it? Because you are just done with Rebecca. And Greg just is like, yeah, totally. And you're like, oh, okay. And what Josh tells him is that the thing that helps me get through everything is I work out. To which Greg is like, I know. Guys, what follows is one of my favorite lines that White Josh has ever said. So when he says, you work out, and White Josh says, yeah, how did you know that? He says, 'cause you work out constantly, and when you stir your coffee, about 80 different muscles ripple. And White Josh says, oh, thank you. Feels amazing. I can only imagine how good it looks. I don't know why that got me so bad. I think it's because of the sincerity with the way that he says it. He really infuses the line with this, like, genuine gratefulness to Greg for saying it. And this, like, just sincerity with the, it feels amazing. Oh God, this made me laugh so hard. I loved it so much. I really, really enjoy White Josh's workout obsession thing. It's like a really difficult thing, both with him and Valencia, to have characters that are into fitness and make them, like, not hateable. Valencia was, like, extremely rife with problematic stuff in the first season, and that was on purpose because she low-key had an eating disorder. It feels like we've shifted away from that some, but, you know, when Rebecca and her became friends again, or friends in the first place, really, Valencia said a number of fat-shamey or self-hating things, and we've got less of that going on. But yeah, it's a tough line to walk, and I really, you guys know, I loved the fucking scene with White Josh and Nathaniel becoming, like, workout buds. I found it really charming, and as, like, I don't have a ton of patience for Nathaniel as a character, but I will say that the dynamic of him with the other men in the show has been really great, and it's something that I appreciate them doing to give him, like, an outside life beyond just his relationships. And especially it shines a light on male friendship. And that's a very sort of weird area in pop culture because of, you know, first of all, there's just straight up homophobia. And it's such a weird thing because in, like, more progressive circles, people really struggle, I think, between we want to have more examples of male friendship that is vulnerable and honest, but also we see it and immediately are like, oh my God, they're so gay for each other. Oh my God, they're so gay. Get together now, kiss. And it's just really like, we sort of shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit with that, where we want to be like, there's nothing gay about being friends. And then as soon as two dudes are very good friends, we're like, oh my God, I see what's going on here. And it's like, no, stop. You're doing the thing, you know? So I really love the difference in the way that he interacts with White Josh versus the way that he interacts with Greg, where he's like, they connect much more on their sardonic take on relationships, their bitterness, let's be honest. Cynicism, I guess, is really a better word for bitterness. I'm pleased with the fact that Nathaniel is getting some room to, like, grow as a person, and that is not coming at the expense of seeing other characters that I like. In fact, it's giving me a chance to see them more than I had before, because I've told you guys how many times I love White Josh. Like, he's really probably, like, one of my favorite characters on the show. And Nathaniel still being around has given me some ways to see White Josh in action and his amazing line delivery. So, you know, like I've said many times how impatient I've been with Nathaniel's storyline and the fact that he's even still here. What are we doing, you know? But I feel like I'm finally getting on board with this now, because we have decided to actually address the fact that he can be a huge toxic dickhead and have him exist outside of obsessing over Rebecca, although that's definitely still going on in this episode. In Gabrielle Ruiz's podcast, she mentioned saying that she was talking to the wardrobe people on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend after she gained some weight and was like, I'm sorry this makes your job harder, but I'm so happy now. Oh, honestly, I didn't realize that she's gained weight. I am certain that that's like a thing that, because she's as slender as she is, I would not notice it. But that's nice to know that, like, she actually sort of progressed with her character about being able to loosen up a little bit. Like, I don't know if that was for the character that she was, like, very, very thin and then she was chilling out because she was told that she was allowed to, or if that was just something that happened with her as a person. So, yeah, that's cool. Good for her. It's really startling when you see people who are, like, on camera they look good and you don't realize how thin they are, and then you see somebody like in person, or you see them in a context that sort of throws into relief what they look like as compared to other normal people. And to look good on camera, you have to be so thin that it's really frightening a little bit. And she still looks amazing, so like, what? Anyway, so this winds up becoming the thing, like Greg winds up going to the gym in order to try and work through his feelings of frustration surrounding Rebecca and his dad. And then we've got the Rebecca and Valencia who are doing spin classes. And Rebecca's going twice a day because she wants to get in shape enough to have sex with strangers. Is what she says, basically. Like, there are going to be people who see me naked now, and I want to make sure that that's, like, you know, that I feel more confident about it. And this is the beginning of the whole thing. She is wearing these really cheap leggings for this class that she's taking twice a day. And this leads to a problem for her later, because she gets a yeast infection. Now, personally, I've had yeast infections many times, but I have not had one that was triggered by this sort of thing. It's almost always been either A, I'm having too much sex. That can be one of the causes, because that throws your pH like way off. B, I have been eating extremely poorly. That can be a major trigger also. Or C, I used like a soap or something that triggered it. And that's like a major one. And I'm not trying to wash internally with anything, but sometimes stuff just gets in if you're taking a bath or, you know. And I know that this is a potential source of infections in women, because it's always talked about, you know, synthetic underwear and whatnot as well. But later on, Valencia gives her like organic cotton leggings, and like, look guys, cotton is the worst fabric to work out in. It's just really bad. It doesn't wick. It's not like, it doesn't wear well when it's like rubbing up. Like if you have chub rub and you're wearing something that's cotton, that is going to wear away at the thighs very quickly. It will chafe under your arms. Is bad. So that was one of those moments where I was like, oh man, there's got to be a happy medium where you're like not wearing something super cheap and bad for you, but also not wearing cotton. But what can you do? And also Rebecca taking 2 classes a day. Oh yeah. Erica, she says antibiotics. Oh, that's true. Definitely major trigger for me also. A lot, like most women, that's just a thing that happens. Yeah. And for anybody interested, you know, there are a number of different over-the-counter medications that you can use. And I know that there are some that are meant to work in one day, which I have never tried. I've tried 3-day ones, and I've always wound up having to do another round, so I don't really buy it on those either. But one of my favorite things to use when I haven't had one actually in years now, but in the past, I worked at Whole Foods, and they have these tea tree oil, like suppositories that melt. And I swear to God, these things were so cooling and so lovely. They made me like, when you put in Monistat, especially the ones that are like meant to clear you up in a shorter amount of time, it burns so bad. It's so painful. It's horrible. And that doesn't happen with the tea tree oil. And I have gotten away with using just the tea tree oils, and that clears it up. And I didn't have to ever go down the Monistat route. So if you guys are ever, like in the situation where you're like, I think that I'm on the edge of getting one and I don't want to fucking deal with Monistat, I can't recommend enough tea tree oil suppositories that I got at Whole Foods. They probably have them like online. And it just is a cooling feeling immediately that makes you just go, oh God, that's better. And I didn't try them for a long time because I assumed that they would not only do nothing, but hurt worse than Monistat. And I was totally wrong. Anyway, so the whole thing with her working out twice a day, I appreciated that even Valencia is like, that's a little extreme. Valencia saying that some shit's a little extreme should be a real red flag for you, Rebecca. Look, I understand. I get really overexcited about things too. But you hurt yourself when you do that. If Rebecca were genuinely doing 2 classes a day, all of a sudden, she would be injured, is what would happen. Just, there's no question. She's going from not working out at all to a spin class, which those are very challenging. 2 times a day? Yeah, no. I don't think so. She would be dead. She would either be straight up injured with a tendon or pressure on her vagina because you're sitting on those fucking things. God, that plus a yeast infection kill me. Or just muscle soreness. Not happening. No, it's not happening. But yeah, she's talking to Valencia in this scene here about the dude that she was going to go on this date with. And what is his name? I can't remember. Jason, right? I think he's been trying to prove to Rebecca that he didn't cancel on her as like a last minute, oh, I'm realizing that I actually don't want to go on a date with you. He's trying to prove, no, I really was sick. And he sends her a couple of pictures of himself throwing up into, he's shitting into like a garbage can because apparently he got food poisoning and he was not able to get to the bathroom in time. And I love the whole way that Valencia reacts to this because she's like, all right, you know what? For me, this is super duper not okay and very upsetting. And I would absolutely not go out with a guy who sent me these pictures. However, obviously this is working for you. And that's what leads her later to being like, why don't you just tell him what's going on? And I was so glad that she said that because I was like, yeah, obviously this guy isn't squeamish. Thing is, though, guys can be weird about, they will talk freely about shit, but then you bring up your period and they act like that's the most disgusting thing they've ever heard. So I can understand, I guess, why Rebecca was more like loath to bring it up. But nevertheless, yeah. She decides to give him another chance, and they go on this date, and in the middle of the date, she realizes that she's feeling away. And then she goes into the bathroom, and we have the scene with the itchy cat. And I just felt for her so bad. There is nothing like having a yeast infection when you are dating. I have had this happen, and it's just really awkward. And especially if you're trying to be casual with somebody, you don't want to share everything that's going on with you. You don't this is one of those things that I have had to sort of understand about how I see relationships versus other people, because I know a lot of women in relationships can be like, for example, the whole I'm going to leave the water running so you can't hear me peeing thing, which was like a real thing in my 20s that people would do. And that was something that I was always like, he knows that I'm pee. I'm sorry. That's fine. He'll get to hear it. Congratulations. Like, who cares? And having to hide that sort of thing, it felt like it was too much. If you can't feel like you are comfortable enough around somebody for them to hear you peeing in the bathroom, then you shouldn't fuck them. You know? On the other hand, there's a difference between a regular bodily function and telling somebody that you have an infection. And that can feel worrisome to them. And also, low-key, men can give you yeast infections. So there's also the possibility of like, oh my God, like what if I got it from him kind of thing. But anyway, this, like, it's just, it's the worst. It is the worst. And this whole scene with Itchy Cat was just super embarrassing and terrible, and I hated it. I felt so bad. And she runs out there and she tells Jason, we can just reschedule in 3 days. And as soon as she said 3 days, I was like, I don't know that that's such a good idea, girl. That's pretty soon. There are 3-day treatments out there, but that stuff is still gonna be in there. And that's not great for him. And you won't necessarily be completely over it yet. That's very ambitious. Sure enough, that winds up becoming an issue. So we'll get back to that. Or maybe I'll just talk about everything with Rebecca this whole episode. She decides that she's going to try and like supercharge her getting better. Because Josh tells her that he used to like get athlete's foot when he was going down to the dojo. And so he would like double up on treatments and go really hard and try and get himself better. And, you know, Rebecca hears this and she's like, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. So Rebecca is talking to Valencia later and says, I was in such a hurry to get better, I kind of blitzkrieged the entire infection. I not only did double ointment, I also did some home remedies like an apple cider vinegar bath. I took the strongest probiotic I could find. Plus, I took an old antibiotic from a sinus infection just in case. So now the itch is gone and I'm feeling so good. I'm really excited to sleep with Jason and stop thinking about my exes, you know? At this point, Josh walks in. Guys, look. Josh, it's just stupid. Nobody should be this jacked. How is this possible? How? What? He's the thighs. The thighs are that's the thing for me. That's what it is. I mean, holy crap. And he's got these little like black briefs on. I love when he does the like little stretch and he's like, oh, hey, V. And Rebecca has to admit like, I did feel something on that. And Valencia is like, look, Josh sucks, but he is damn fine. And, you know, yeah. Just damn. Anyway, Rebecca decides that she's going to not wear panties tonight because she's getting VPL from the panties that she's wearing. So she starts to take them off. And as she does this, Valencia gets this gagifying expression. And Rebecca says, what's wrong? And she says, you need to ask yourself that. There is a terrible smell. And it turns out that by going too hard on this infection, she wound up giving herself vaginosis. I have never had vaginosis that I know of. I'm pretty certain I haven't because I think it's pretty unmistakable. But from what I have heard, it is really horrifying. And it's such an unfortunate thing because there is such a stigma. It's a weird... Women have just really been subjected to a lot of like conflicting opinions and stereotypes about ourselves. But like every dude wants to fuck, but they are also really terrified of vaginas. And so there is this whole thing about vaginas smelling like fish and just a lot of jokes about that, you know. And so there was like a knee-jerk reaction when we have the whole like fish series of jokes that Jason makes when he winds up coming in the house later. But I was like, okay, this isn't supposed to be that Rebecca's healthy, though. This is supposed to be a symptom. And yeah, that's a bad scene. So, because that's often the thing. It's like, oh, they smell like fish, and it's just taken as like, that's the thing all the time. Look, let's be honest. Pussy smells like pussy. It's not going to smell like anything else. But it shouldn't be like that. That's like a problem. You know, you recognize that. And she winds up getting this new cat dance from the Funky Cat. And all I could think with this, I don't know how many of you all have seen the ads for Lumi, but it's a deodorant company that does these very extensive ads that are, you know, several minutes long with costume changes and the whole thing. And they often use the word funky. And this felt like an ad that they would do, to be honest, because they were Lumi was developed by a gynecologist who had a lot of women coming to her with concerns about vaginal odor. And then she began to like look into this, and it turned out much more often to be an issue with bacteria that were around the vagina rather than any smell that was coming from internally. And so she developed this deodorant that goes on the skin like around and basically up your butt crack and everything. And I've bought it, and the thing, it's amazing. Like, highly recommend Lumi if any of you, especially if you have like a belly apron or if you have big boobs, you know that like any place that skin lies against skin, that can be an issue. And this stuff is just amazing. But yeah, this Funky Cat just really reminded me of Lumi and the commercials that they have done. And poor Rebecca. Oh, it's like, she can't even like be around herself. You know, the smell is like following her around, and she winds up just yelling out the door, Valencia, I'm sick. Can you please tell Jason to leave? So this is the second time that she has had to, you know, beg off a date. And she finally decides to just tell him. And he says that's cool. Let's hang out tonight. My mom's a gyno, NBD. I'll bring over a room spray, put on some thick sweats. And Valencia's expression in this scene is so great because she's trying really hard to be happy with her, like, for her friend. But she's also just low-key so creeped out by their, like, openness of their relationship. Son of a gyno? What a dream. So that is what they do. And later on, Rebecca says, you know, there's other things that we could do. And so they go to her room and they're making out, and she's very excited because there's going to be something sexual happening. And then we have Greg and Nathaniel show up, and she hears them and thinks that they're just cats and goes outside to like swat them away. And instead it winds up being a collective of the two of them standing there, Josh running out with a tennis racket to scare the cats away, and then Jason coming out wondering why there are all of her ex-boyfriends here, including one that lives with her who is wearing tiny briefs. And he says that he's just going to head home. And by the end of the episode, Rebecca has texted him a few times apologizing for what happened, and he hasn't gotten back to her. So I guess that's it for Jason, and I honestly am super bummed about it. I appreciate especially when Rebecca's talking to Valencia, and she says something like, I did everything right, and it still didn't work out. And that's just that's life. It sucks, you know? She handled everything the way she should, but these dudes keep haunting her. So speaking of that, we'll back up and let's talk about the meet cute between Greg and Nathaniel, which is hilarious. So Greg has come to the gym with White Josh and is given like a free month because of a coupon that White Josh tries to act as him being generous, but is actually pure accident. That they have a ton of them, and it just worked out. So he's doing his weights, and Nathaniel comes over and asks him, "Do you need the 40s?" And Greg says, "Oh no, I'm not going to need those because I can't lift them because they are too heavy." And I really appreciated the simplicity of that. Yep, that's it. And they wind up getting along really well. The road to fitness is 1 pound at a time, but don't use the 1 pound weights. You'll embarrass yourself. Oh, y'all, I can't tell y'all. Look, I'm gonna turn my camera real quick. Those of you who are only listening to this episode, apologies ahead of time because you won't be able to see the glory. So I redid my office and decided that it was time for me to begin to really work out in my own space, because the gym had people who didn't wear masks ever, including the staff. And I just got really sick of feeling like I was risking my life every time I went to the gym. So I decided to invest in a home gym, which, as you saw, is flawless and beautiful, and I love it so much. And the problem is that I love pink, and I want my home gym to reflect this, and in some ways I've managed to really do that well. But if you want dumbbells that are pink, you better be ready to just work out with 3 pounds. I don't know why, but all the cute, colorful dumbbells are 15 pounds and below. And then you just get black and gray. And it's so distressing to me, because why can't we just have fun? Why can't things just be a good time, even if they're difficult? You know, let me have a 25-pound dumbbell in hot pink. Just let me have it. Come on. Nope, can't find it. Anyway, I did manage to get a pink kettlebell at 15 pounds, and that was a real coup for me. And X Training has like some heavy kettlebells, but the hot pink ones are all sold out because of course they are, because they're awesome and everybody wants them. So these two wind up hitting it off, and White Josh doesn't realize about their friendship until he sees them off like chatting together, and suddenly realizes what's going on. And it is, again, with White Josh being one of my favorite characters, he is talking to his partner, who apparently also works at the gym, and his cringing as he watches and realizes what's happening is so good. He's like wrapped around his little clipboard. Oh, it's so hard for both of them to make new friends. Oh, God. And his partner says, "Babe, they're adults. They'll understand." And he says, "I know I should, but I can't. Look at them. They're so happy together. Oh, God, they think they're just regular friends." And just the whole way he is in this scene is so good. He is so good. Why isn't he in more? He's a genius with comedy. I fucking love this dude. Anyway, so he just keeps putting off the conversation because he feels way too awkward about it. And this leads to the inevitable bump into each other, because Greg and Nathaniel talk it over and decide to each make a promise that they will do the thing that they're worried about. So for Greg, it's going and telling his ex that he forgives her and maybe initiating something. And for Nathaniel, it's confessing that he can't stop thinking about her despite the fact that she has rejected him. Both of them decide to do a thing to actually address what they clearly want. It's sort of the inverse, actually, of what happens with Nathaniel and White Josh, where the two of them are both trying to simply forget about and get over a person. It's like they decided to circle it back around and be like, okay, but what happens if you don't get over them. Like, what then? And that leads to them running into each other in front of Rebecca's door. And it takes a minute before they each realize why the other is there. And finally, understanding dawns. And this just, I really want them to be friends anyway. It bums me out when Josh turns up, white Josh runs up and is like, oh, okay, yeah, Greg, Nathaniel, Greg. Oh man, I did not do a good job with this, huh? And he says, I'm just going to see you guys at the, nope, probably not. Which I guess is like, you guys are not going to go back to the gym after this or something. And I'm like, why not? Come on, guys. That was clearly working for you. Don't let this whole thing with Rebecca get in the middle of it. I really want them to just be friends. Valencia and Rebecca are friends, and they're Eskimo sisters. Why can't these two work it out? It would be fine. They'd be fine. It wouldn't be fine. I don't know. Could it? Because they become friends despite the fact that Rebecca's in the midst of dating Josh. And maybe it's just the fact that they each still have feelings for Rebecca. Because Valencia didn't have feelings towards Josh anymore. She was still hurt. But she was over him as a person. So maybe that's really the thing, is that both of them are kind of still interested, and that really wouldn't, that sucks. So yeah, this leads to the whole thing with Josh running out, and I love the running joke of each of the guys saying women are, and then realizing that they can't say anything derogatory anymore. But at the end, Rebecca says, men can't live with them, can't kill them. And Valencia says, yes, we get to say that. And I really enjoyed that a lot. But I was super bummed that Jason left, because I was like, yeah, this is a really weird situation, but it's not her fault. She's been super honest with you this whole time. But you know what? It's not his fault either. And we all get to draw the line where we feel like we're going to draw the line. And if I found out that the dude that I was making out with, super hot ex-girlfriend, was bouncing around their apartment in lingerie, maybe I wouldn't be super cool with that either. So, all right, Jason, I get it. So yeah, that's what winds up happening with that. Like I said, I really still want, Greg and Nathaniel to be friends. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. I guess we'll see. And this is when we get the nostalgia cat. And at the end, guys, the nostalgia cat says something about Marco, who really flipped her like a pancake, I think she said. Is that somebody that we've met, Marco? That doesn't ring a bell with me. I can't remember if that's somebody from the show or just somebody that Rebecca has mentioned. Rowan says, Eskimo sisters is probably a phrase that needs to be retired. Oh, I didn't think of that. You're totally right, Rowan. Yeah, because that word is low-key a slur, isn't it? Or it's just not correct. Marco is Greg's dad. Oh my God, you guys, I didn't realize that. That makes it so much worse. Oh my God. Oh God, I didn't realize that. I hate it. I don't know why. I just wanted to believe that the sex with him was not good, and that we could just, the fact that the sex was good is so much worse. Oh God, I hate it. Oh, I hate it so much. Okay. Ugh. All right, moving on. So I only have 5 minutes left to talk about the whole thing that is going on with Daryl. And it's a weird one. I did actually think it was a clever way of handling this whole thing. But Daryl comes back to work and he hasn't got his mustache, although it does look like he's working on growing it back vaguely. And he gets really excited because there's all these balloons and stuff. And he thinks that this is for him, I think, because he took some time off. I'm I'm assuming, to care for the baby, right? So this is like his return after that. And he thinks they're excited for him to come back. But instead, it's a celebration for Bert's birthday. And they celebrate his workiversary. And what is really great about this is that the show realized that Bert and Daryl are honestly really similar types. And so how are they going to have two characters who embody so many of the same attributes working side by side and have that still be interesting instead of just a double up of like too much? And how they decided to handle it initially is to have Bert be in competition with Daryl. So this turns into what George compares to his parents competing for his love when he was a kid, when they were going through a divorce. So each of them is trying to one up the other, but they're not actually listening to the needs of the people that they are trying to impress and get love from. And Daryl in particular is extremely transparent about how much he resents Bert. But as things like go on, Bert begins to acknowledge the fact that he like did some things in direct competition with Daryl. And we eventually have Father Bra showing up, and he does the mediation because they get into a literal fight. And honestly, these two getting into a fist fight, that's a genius bit of writing there. Just the two that you would really never expect to resort to physical violence being the ones that do it, on each other works perfectly. And I thought it was really funny. And then Father Bra turning up and Maya just throwing herself at him. Girl, I get it, And it's weird because he's like, I'm a priest. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, there are like denominations where you could still totally date and get married. Like, what's your deal exactly, man? Because that's the whole thing on like broad church, is a vicar can be in a relationship. And I just find that so like, it just breaks my brain a little bit because I have this Catholic idea in my head and that's just not always how it is. Anyway, Maya isn't wrong. Father Bra is very adorable. He's so level-headed that it's very attractive, especially to somebody like me. And he's just really funny with how much he's trying to emphasize being professional. And yet Bert and Daryl have no interest in that. And they just decide to each agree on being the daddy and the papa. Which... it's a little bit too kinky for me. It's a no for me. But, not everything's going to work for me. It's fine. So yeah, that's what goes on between the two of them. And like I said, I thought that was a really smart way to handle these two characters. I don't know going forward with the two of them getting along exactly how that works. I think having them in conflict makes a ton of sense and is very funny. And I wouldn't want that to continue for more than one episode. But now, how do you handle it that they have decided to like be on the same side and they're each so similar in so many ways? Maybe you point out the ways that they can have the same energy but be really different in their approach. Or you have them each bounce off one another to the extent that the absurdity just, it becomes self-evident. I don't know. But I'm interested to see how that works out. And also, I really enjoyed Greg saying to Nathaniel, because Nathaniel keeps being like, I'm nice now, so go ahead. And Greg saying, you don't have to keep saying that. You can just be it and people will think it. And Nathaniel just goes, like, that's an interesting approach. Maybe I'll try that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode actually a lot. I felt for Rebecca though in the end, like still not getting laid and really feeling like low key, oh, I guess that's just not going to happen for me because that's just, my bad luck right now. And then we get to pull back and the camera is on all of the various cats at the bar talking about the people that they have memories of her having sex with. And it is super, oh my God. Nathaniel, that's where it's at. I'm more of a Greg girl myself. I can't stop thinking of Marco. He flipped me like a pancake. Oh, God. And they're drinking milk. What a weird episode. But I really liked this one. All right, guys. I am going to wrap up. I'm so mad at you guys for telling me that Marco is Greg's dad. Like, thank you for the information, but also I hate it. But yeah, thank you, Tegan, for commissioning this. I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. And let's see, when's the next episode? March 12th, season 4, episode 10. I can work with you. All right, we'll see you then. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.